Join me, Phil, Stephanie, and Russell Gerber on an interactive show designed to give you more insight and context to all things African.
And on today's show, we're going to have a look at the leopards of Africa. Today, it's going to be just poor me, Russell, on my own. I expect all of you out there to please interact and send in your questions. I'm going to go through a number of great videos that we've got from awesome highlights of leopards over the last year or so. So welcome to the show, everybody. It's lovely to have you. Sitting down here in Cape Town, I've got Max here next to me. And we're going to crack on with the show. Remember to register on the website. You can pop those questions through the bottom of your viewing box. You'll see them there. Just make sure that you register. And then you can join us. So without further ado, what are we chatting about today? Of course, it's these beautiful spotted cats. Certainly one of the most elegant animals out there in nature, certainly here in Africa. And as many of you know, my favorite animal. And we're going to be going through various aspects of the leopard's life today. Often a very secretive life. I'm sure many of you will know that going to the bush can be one of the most difficult animals to find out on safari. For many people, it can be the viewing of a lifetime. And what's so special for us with the cameras, in this clip here that you can see, is we often get to watch them without disturbing them at all. We're not bothered by any outside interference. You can watch them in their natural environment. And as we get into the drier season, we will see them more and more often on the cameras. But one of the things that makes them so difficult to find in the bush is, of course, their camouflage and the fact that they tend to be more active at night. They are nocturnal by nature, crepuscular, which means they're active in the early mornings and early evenings. Now, what I can tell you, having been a safari guide and working in the wild for 17 years now, is that when you make rules about when animals are active, they always tend to do the exact opposite. So, of course, leopards can be active during the day, and as we can see here in this lovely little clip, you do often see them out in the daytime, but they tend to hunt in the evenings, and we'll get to that a little later. So today we're going to be going through some of the details about leopards themselves. We're going to go into territories, we're going to go into mating, hunting, various threats faced by leopards in their lifetime, and of course a touch on conservation towards the end of the show. At the end, I'll give you guys some time for some questions for us. So please do send those in if you've got anything on your mind, or if there's anything leopard related you'd like to ask about, just shoot them my way. So kicking off here, another lovely clip of a leopard at night, which is what we tend to get most of the time on the cameras. Just a little bit of detail about them in general. So leopards are a medium-sized cat. The males will get up to around 90 kilograms. And the females often significantly smaller at around 40 to 50. And though they're not particularly big, they are extremely powerful cats, widely spread throughout southern Africa, pretty much just limited to areas where there are protected areas, at least. These days, farmed areas have eradicated leopards. So we tend to see them in more wild and protected spots. Males and females spend most of their lives on their own. Females will only have company when they are mating or when they have cubs. The males and females, as you can see in this video here, this is a young male, fiercely protect territories that they will establish. Males' territories will be much larger, often incorporating a number of females within their territory, so sometimes around 10 kilometers squared. It would be a smaller territory if there's a lot of food available. In a dry region, it would be much bigger, up to 200 kilometers even. And it will be the responsibility of that male to walk that whole territory just about every few days, scent marking, just like this chap here. And the females will actually do the same. And as I say, just happen to have smaller territories. Often their offspring will, especially the females, will establish territories just next door to mom. But the males, once they're old enough, will be forced off further away, often chased off by their father. So territories are very important for leopard. As I mentioned, they will fight tooth and nail to protect them, the males in particular. You hear carefully here in this little video, you can hear the alarm calls of baboon. We'll get to that a little later in terms of prey species and potential threats, of course, to leopard. But as I mentioned, territories are really important for them, protecting them from other males coming into the area. Of course, being able to pass on your genes of utmost importance. But of course, it's also important to protect productive areas where you do have good hunting, and there are a lot of antelope species around, which is why you see often good numbers of leopard in the southern parts of Kruger. Of course, a number of our cameras are located. You can see here, this is a wonderful clip of a male and female together. As I mentioned, they'll generally spend most of their life on their own. And you will see them come together for brief periods of around a week to 2 weeks. During that time, they will mate several times a day, often every 15 to 20 minutes. So it's not particularly long, each encounter, but they'll do it over and over to ensure the success of the interaction. Watch carefully here. You can see it's quite a violent affair. And, as I mentioned, pretty quick. And they will do that over and over, as I said, to ensure the success of the pairing. After that, they will go their separate ways after a few weeks, as I mentioned. And the female will then go off, hopefully impregnated. They have a gestation period of around about 100 days, with no particular fixed breeding season either. Sometimes see a peak again around the end of winter when hunting is very successful. Animals, or their prey species, tend to be a little weaker and easier to pick up. For the most part, we see no real fixed breeding season. Females will have 2 or 3 cubs. Very little and very helpless when they're born, around about 500 grams. But they only have 2 teats. Mammary glands, of course, and just listen carefully here, you'll hear this. I always love that sound. It is, as I mentioned, pretty quick and very violent. And unfortunately, can be a little painful for the female. Like many cat species, the males have small barbs on their penis to, again, improve the chances of impregnating the female. But after about 100 days, and in this case, this cub is a few months old, say, educated guess of around 6 months, the female will give birth, as I said, normally to 2 or 3 cubs. But the life of a young leopard is treacherous indeed. They have a number of threats. And those threats generally come from sympatric predators that live in similar areas, things like lion, other leopards, hyena, even wild dogs. They happen to find the cubs unattended. They will often kill them and generally won't eat them. So it's really just killing to eliminate competition. And though it's very sad, it is a reality of a leopard's life. Only around 30% of cubs will make it to adulthood, and that, of course, varies according to location and the skills of the mother. Some mothers are better than others. Some have good luck, some have bad luck, and it all depends on a number of factors. But bringing a pair of cubs all the way through to adulthood is really challenging for a leopardess. Of course, she does all the hunting on her own. The father would be back to perusing his territory and mating with other females that fall within his territory. The special things, in this case, watching that young cub, is it's something that you don't often see. Because leopards are generally very shy animals. The cubs are even more shy. Very much to do with the threats to them that I just mentioned. But moving on to something that the leopards are most famous for. Once they reach adulthood, they become significantly powerful and dangerous predators to various antelope species. And we've got a number of little videos that highlights that. In most cases here, you'll see that this leopard in particular is completely outgunned, and a giraffe would be something well beyond its capabilities to take down. And though it's a fun video for us to watch, what is important to note is that you would often find leopards can take down prey 2 to 3 times their own body weight. I've actually seen a big male leopard that actually took down a fully grown kudu bull. which is extremely rare. They tend to go for the youngsters. Bearing in mind, fully grown kudu bull is around 250 kilograms. So as I mentioned, between 2 and 3 times the weight of that animal. In this clip, it's really just cool watching that leopard considering its options with this giraffe. As I also mentioned, very much out of its capabilities in terms of taking down something this large. But it won't stop the giraffe from being intimidated by it. We've got a clip coming up in just a moment. They won't be sure. Remember, these cameras are picking up ambient light. There's actually no light here whatsoever, so the giraffe wouldn't be able to see that leopard at all. You see here from closer angle, just to actually watch it up close. We're watching. Try to address some of your questions in the meantime. Got a question from Stephanie who asks, what's the difference between a panther and leopard? And are they black leopards? There's no particular difference, Stephanie. There are a number of subspecies across the world, through India, in fact, all the way up into northern Africa. Of course, the panthers of South America, which are more closely related to jaguar. To answer your question, yes, there are also black leopards. They are extremely rare in Africa. And it is actually just a genetic dimorphism. It's something that doesn't happen particularly often. But it's not a different species. It just happens to be a leopard that is born with more pigmentation in its fur. So I hope that answers your question. I wanted to just watch this video here now. You'll see for a moment. In a moment, this giraffe having a happy drink. All seems peaceful. And there you see the leopard coming to check him out. And off he goes, not quite sure what that is. As I mentioned, pitch black here. The leopard would have no chance against a powerful, huge animal like a giraffe. They're extremely opportunistic. Again, just a lovely window into the secret life of leopards. It's something we just don't often get to see. We got a question from D. Montgolfier asking how many times a female can have cubs in her life. Thank you. So, Mr. Montgolfier, thank you. And a great question, nonetheless. The leopards in the wild will only live around 15 years or so. Would be pretty old for a leopard in the wild. For the most part, the gestation period of about 100 days, at least a year and a half or 2 years between cubs. Litters. So in general, you'd have 3 to 4 sets of cubs in the lifetime of a successful leopardess. This is your question to the Montgolfier. This little clip I want to show you again. This one in particular highlighting the typical prey of leopard. They will tend to go from medium to small prey. A very important prey species for them is impala, of course. This chap, I thought it was a really funny video. He's not interested in those impala at all, but it is certainly the most common species we see in the southern parts of Kruger, preyed upon by leopard. Unfortunately, with that comes a number of dangers for them as well. The chances of getting injured in a hunt are always pretty high, considering the weapons available to the prey species, like the horns on those male impala we just saw. Even a stray hoof to the wrong part of the face, and in this case to the eye of this leopard, can cause permanent damage. And I've mentioned to you folks in the past that these animals are extremely resilient, can recover. Sometimes an injury like that can be absolutely devastating. This is a clip that highlights that point. This is an older male. You can see he's been through a rough life. He's looking quite skinny here as well. See, as he gets up from drinking, injury sustained to his left front leg. Though they can be injured by prey species like impala, they often go for things like baboon as well, which have their own huge canines as weapons to defend themselves. We've already mentioned the potential danger of other predators. Of course, one of the major ways that males get injured is in territorial fights. In my opinion, it's likely what happened to this chap. You can see that tail curled up like that is a clear sign of distress. You can see he's really struggling to walk. As I mentioned, this is very likely to be from a fight with another male. And when you see something like this in the wild, and if you see it on our cameras, you would often think, well, this chap has got no chance and probably will not survive. What I really wanted to highlight is that I've got another clip of him coming up in just a moment. It really shows the incredible resilience and the ability to heal that these amazing cats have. So this was about a week later. A shot taken at night, of course. This is the same male, and if you watch carefully, you can see the injury on his left leg there, the one that he just shook. And look how much better he is already. He's still got the tail curled up. It's obviously still painful, but he's walking much better already. And this was just a week later. So it's very possible that that is an injury that he will recover from and be able to hunt again. And one of the things that many people don't know about leopards is they will also often scavenge kills from either other leopards that are not quite as dominant or powerful as them, or from other species as well. So Donna-Lee McClellan says that's one of the saddest images I've ever seen. I completely agree, Donna-Lee, and that's why I wanted to show you they do get injured out there, and of course it's a tough life, but their resilience is something that is really, really important for leopard. And they are animals that survive in all sorts of environments, spread out all the way across southern Africa. And because of that resilience and their adaptable nature, they are one of the most widely occurring big predators in the world, actually. This was just another clip I wanted to show you of potential dangers. Nothing happened here, but I thought a really great clip of this hippo checking out this leopard eye to eye. One thing that can happen to leopard, and another threat to them, of course, is crocodile. Again, not common, but it can happen from time to time. There's also a record of a leopard being taken by an African rock python. Once again, it tends to be very rare. But living in the wild as a leopard is something that is a constant challenge for them, and being solitary as they are, always have to be on their toes and weighing up the threats and pros and cons of any potential hunt. They have to be very aware of the territory around them, what other dangers there might be in the form of other predators, even other leopards, as I mentioned. Lastly, of course, one of the big threats is porcupine. We don't have footage of a porcupine interacting with leopard, but it can be something that is very dangerous for them. Young male leopards in particular often investigate the opportunity presented. But after they give it a try, they often realize that it's a very difficult animal to take down, and sometimes they can be injured mortally. Those are some of the dangers that leopards have to deal with out in the wild. The biggest threat, of course, to their current numbers is, of course, the limited territory and area that they have protected. So they can live close to the proximity of human populations. Of course, the protection of their prey species, and of course, just them staying away from livestock are the major threats to their populations across southern Africa. They are actually listed as vulnerable on the IUCN Red List. And though in most places in southern Africa we're very fortunate in seeing mostly stable population numbers, in other parts of Africa and certainly other parts of the world, various subspecies are highly endangered. Things like the Amur leopard in Eastern Europe and Russia, and of course the famous snow leopards of Nepal. This particular species here in Africa, Panther pardus, though not quite as endangered, is certainly something we need to be aware of. We've seen a decline in the number of big cats across Africa, including lions. It's very likely that the same decline is present in leopard as well. But thankfully, there are a number of projects out there in research of leopards who've dedicated their lives to the secret of cats and figuring out population dynamics, into helping us to conserve them better. The most important thing for them is, of course, these protected areas in which they live. A big part of that is keeping it protected is, of course, tourism. Beautiful programs like ours, AfriCamp, in combination or in partnership with the lodges. Protecting those wild areas It's really the most important thing when it comes to the future for these magnificent cats. And as I mentioned, I've been fortunate over the years to take a number of photographs, and I've spent a lot of time in the wild with these amazing cats. And I never get tired of it. Got a comment here from Donnelly McClelland. This has been such a feast. How wonderful to see all this footage of leopards in one show. Couldn't agree more, Donnelly. They really are magnificent. And just finishing off the show here with this long clip of this beautiful female hanging out at the waterhole. This clip went on for about 10 minutes, actually, into the evening. It's just investigating things. Looks like a young female establishing her own territory. Every day that you get to enjoy a leopard sighting as long as this, it's one of the great benefits, as I mentioned, of our cameras in these remote locations. I got a question from Jean as well. Do they eat fish? Jean, it's a great question. They actually do, yes. They have a very broad diet, in fact. They'll go from anything from termites, small insects, reptiles, all the way to the big mammals that we were talking about earlier. And I've actually even watched a big male leopard kill a young crocodile. Snuck up behind it on a sandbank. You can see us changing to our night camera here on the footage. And it snuck up behind that crocodile on the sandbank and jumped onto its back, grabbed it by its neck, and dragged it off into the bush to be eaten. So that was crocodile. As the things dry up in the water holes, see it as we get into the dry season now in the winter and things start to get drier and drier. Might be fortunate enough to see leopard actually take something out, grab a fish, one of these catfish in the shallow water. To keep your eye out, Gene, you never know. But folks, that's about it from us today for the On Point show. I hope you enjoyed our little visit into the secret lives of leopards. Hope to see you all again next week for our On Point show. Phil will be back with us. It's always a pleasure hosting you. Thank you for joining us as always. Please do share with your friends and let them know to join us at any time.